after some 5,000 years of history and culture, a very disparate country, a nation like no other nation before, a nation of several languages, cultures, ethnicity, religions, castes, regions, with enormous unmatched diversity. It has come together under one flag, under one constitution, with one goal. And this is a remarkable triumph of human spirit. In the ultimate analysis, a constitution is about the aspirations of the society. It's not merely about a piece of land. It's not merely about real estate. There's always a gulf between a societal attitudes and mores and constitutional values and national aspirations. The Constitution is a document that not only sets the aspirations and goals for the country, but also gives us the roadmap, the instruments, the mechanisms. And therefore, celebration of the Constitution, celebration of founding of the Republic, and celebration of the notion of liberty granted to ourselves, celebration of universal franchise granted for the first time in human history. At the very inception of the Constitution, India is the first country to experiment in this audacious, in this extraordinary manner. That celebration is vital because that's what nationhood is about. It's also a reminder to us of what the Constitution is about and how much we have traveled and how much more we have to traverse, because there's a lot more to accomplish to really fulfill the constitutional mandate. It's not enough to have the elected houses of parliament and independent institutions of the Constitution and liberty. It's important that the basic goals of the Constitution, justice, liberty, fraternity, and equality, they become very real, so that every citizen in this country understands the meaning of Constitution and constitutional values and rejoices in them because they mean something very real, touching their lives. We haven't reached the stage yet, and therefore the Constitution is both a celebration and a reminder. I would say there are three extraordinary successes. The fact that a nation of such diversity, unmatched diversity as I mentioned, has actually come together and built a republic is an extraordinary success. Most people don't realize the great nation building work that happened in this country in the early stages of our independence, even before the republic is created in many ways, and the republic has consolidated that. More than 540 princely states came together, conquering so many differences of language, region, religion, and culture, and even history in some cases, and founded the republic. That's an unmatched victory in human history. The second is that we have retained unity over the past 60 plus years, despite all our diversities, our lack of experience in running a democratic society and system. We protect the liberty, and universal franchise is given to every citizen of this country. It's actually, when you look back, an astounding feat. A country which is riven by caste dissensions, where a significant section of the population for centuries were oppressed beyond belief, or believed to be subhuman. To really recognize that we are all one and we all have the same right in electing our representatives and making decisions for our country. And even perhaps more astounding in some respects, the fact that a nation that was broken up on grounds of religion has found it in its heart to recognize that all people, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, are equal, and they all get the same vote, they have the same rights. In fact, in some ways, the Constitution guaranteed more rights to the minorities in India, an almost unparalleled accomplishment anywhere in the world. Therefore, preservation of these liberties and the universal franchise is a remarkable triumph. Third is federalism. India is the only country after the Second World War that actually created a very high quality federal structure which matured over time. In the first 30, 40 years after independence, the complaints were about the states' rights being abrogated by the Union and center riding roughshod over the states. Whereas today, if anything, the union government is weaker than the states. The states have come into their own. a large number of factors, they have come together to make sure that the federalism is real, it's become very mature today. And with all this, despite our not being able to fulfill our true potential in economic sense, we have done quite a bit. India could have done a lot more, a lot better. Certainly we committed mistakes in terms of excessive emphasis on state control, for instance, misreading the meaning of socialism, and not allowing the individual enterprise and initiative to flourish, phenomenal corruption, education, healthcare having failed. But despite all these difficulties, India has seen a modest economic growth for some time and fairly impressive economic growth in recent years. We are nowhere near fulfilling our potential yet, but certainly there is hope that we will fulfill our potential in the next 2-3 decades if we set our house in order. And we have seen that we are capable of achieving high rates of economic growth, and in some ways, some cases, leapfrogging, so that some stages of development can be bypassed and we can quickly get into the modern age. India can realistically hope that in a generation's time, we'll be one of the 3 major economies and societies in the world. And we have to now redeem that pledge. To accomplish this much is not a small thing in a democratic society, in a fractious society, in a robust society, in a loud and noisy society, with so many differences and so many diversities. I think we have a lot to celebrate, even as we recognize there's a lot to do.
What are also the party's efforts to regional public participation in the government?
You know, there is one thing that we have failed in, and that is not recognizing that all governance has to be citizen-centered and local. The republic, the constitutional values, and the government and the elections are all about a national parliament and the state legislature. Power is too centralized. And people are not enabled to understand the link between the vote and the public good, between taxes and the services that they get, most of all between authority and accountability. So there's a complete disconnect between those in government, whether they are politicians or bureaucrats, and the people who pay the taxes, the citizens in whose name the government is run. That's not a very happy situation. In many ways, most of the ills of our democracy can be traced to this one fact of over-centralization. We have to rekindle that spirit in the villages, in the towns and mohallas, in the wards of the city, and we have to restructure our governance process to make our citizens the centerpiece of our republic at the local level. And we must truly empower the local governments. Unfortunately, though we have a constitutional amendment, 1970, the 73rd and 74th amendments, they are good in style but bad in substance. They have come nowhere near fulfilling our requirements. They have created overstructured, underpowered local governments. One of Lok Satta's fundamental goals is to mobilize public opinion and to bring pressure on the political process, to recognize the centrality of decentralization in transforming our republic and making people realize both their responsibility and their power at the local level. There's a second dimension to it. In the first 25-30 years of our republic, the people who participated in the freedom struggle and people of that class and quality, they continued to play a very important role in nation building. But eventually, they all disappeared from the national scene. They've realized that because of over-centralization, because of bad delivery, even for simple things to be delivered, if you are in politics, there's enormous pressure on you, there's an enormous burden on you, so much so that you have no personal life, you have no economic goals, you have no financial security, you have no career, you have no opportunity to do anything that's dear to yourself and your family, and you have to devote yourself with enormous personal sacrifice for the country's cause. And for honest people, that is not sustainable. Freedom struggle is a different thing. It's possible to have those bursts of sacrifice in the cause of the liberty of the country. But it's not reasonable to expect that degree of sacrifice from everybody for day-to-day governance and for running politics and society. And therefore, the best in the country have disappeared from the public life. They shunned public life. The people who remained are the sons and daughters of politicians and the people who made politics a business. There is an unspoken compromise that we will be available to the people at their beck and call for simple things like getting electricity on a day-to-day basis, getting a birth certificate and ration card. All these services must have been the people's by right as a matter of routine without having to go to anybody. We made them so difficult that without somebody's intermediation, nothing can happen. But in return, the local politician, he can plunder the state. He can take away the government land, he can take away government contracts, he can take away the government resources, tax money, and therefore there is this very unholy synergy is there. And that's become the stuff of politics today. The political parties and their cadres today have an equation. You do whatever it takes to get us power, to get us the votes. And in order to get the votes, you buy the vote, you offer them all kinds of freebies, and you be available on a day-to-day basis at enormous personal cost to get even small, simple things done. Nothing substantial. You will not change the country. You will not improve the quality of life. But you will at least be available there and give them some confidence that they can be delivered so that you can garner that in the form of a vote. But in return, this is your career, this is your life, this is your business. Do whatever you like. Make money. Make personal fortunes at the cost of the public. That is politics today. It doesn't matter which party it is, regional party, national parties, left, right, center. That's become the norm of the political India. Unless that is changed, unless the best and the brightest again come back into public life, unless they recognize that they have to give a significant part of their time and energy and resources to rebuild the country, to build the nation. That is one. And simultaneously, unless you make it possible by making local things happen at the local level without putting excessive burden on the political people, we will not be able to rejuvenate a republic. No matter what we say, no matter how many street battles you have, no matter how much you cry hoarse for a Lokpal, all these are necessary, but they are not sufficient. They will not transform the nature of politics, and therefore, India will substantially continue to be what it is today. And that is what we have to recognize. The good people, the well-meaning people who are fighting against corruption, they must recognize. We must fight corruption, but corruption itself, in a substantial measure, is because there is a disjunction between demand and supply of services. Unless supply of services is improved at every level, unless it's localized, unless you enable people to stand up locally and get things done locally, you will always have corruption and maladministration and non-delivery at every level in some form or the other. Therefore, there is no one silver bullet for the country's problems. If there is one most important thing, I would say, it is giving power back to the people, helping them realize their potential, recognizing their potential, and giving them both responsibility and power. And we must trust our people just as we trust a child. A child did not know how to walk from day one, but we didn't carry the child all the time on our backs. The child would have been paralyzed. We allow the child to walk when the time is right. We allow the child to fall. We only give them some protection to make sure that there is no fatality, there is no serious injury. But we allow the child to walk and learn. Ultimately, the child learns. If that didn't happen, every child would have been paralyzed and crippled. That's what we're doing to our people, and to our villages, and to our cities and towns and wards. And if that is not changed, our democracy becomes illusory. In a substantial measure, it is seen to be illusory by many people. From romance to substance, we have to move on.
Can you tell us a little about constitutional revolution and how India can participate in that?
As I said, the central challenge of transforming politics in India is how do you bring back the best and the brightest into the political process? On the one hand, we all know that typically in most constituencies, enormous expenditure is incurred for vote buying and distribution of liquor to get elected. Even the losing candidates spend 5 to 7 crores for assembly constituency, sometimes much more. For parliament, maybe multiples of that. At least in states like Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Other states are a little behind it, but they're catching up fast. Now, if you want to counter that, as I said before, you have to give confidence to the people that you're available to them to get these services delivered. Now, is it a very sensible way of running a country? Not at all. But that's what we have at this point in time. Until we empower local governments, until we make service delivery institutionalized, easy, impersonal, without any effort in intermediation, like it happens in many countries, whether it's in the United States or many other civilized countries, until that stage, people will still rely on their local politicians to get things done. Just because we have powerful ideas, we are clean and honest, we are competent,